Welcome to the Rock's Back Pages podcast. My name is Barney Hoskins. I'm sat here, as usual, with Mr. Mark Pringle.
Hi, Barney.
And we're both sat here with our very special guest, Neil Tennant. Welcome.
Hello, nice to be here.
We're very honoured.
In your cupboard. Actually, in the archive. In the archive.
In the archive.
Well, we're very honoured to have you here, especially since you must be very busy with the new Pet Shop Boys album.
Actually, we've sort of done the promo now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're just getting ready we're going on tour.
Yeah.
And so we're just starting to work on that now.
Well, thank you for coming in on a very drizzly Thursday.
Yes.
To talk to us. In this episode, we'll be discussing everything that's new on Rock's Back Pages and paying tribute to the great Andrew Weatherall, who died earlier this week. But let's start with Smash Hits, the fabulous pop magazine that you wrote for, Neil, in the early 80s.
That's 82 to 85, yeah.
82 to 85. Tell us how Smash Hits shaped your sensibility, and the flip side of that, how you helped to shape Smash Hits, because you were, for a period, you were assistant editor, were you not?
I was, yeah. Well, I was always interested in pop music and also in songwriting. You know, as a child, I got a guitar and I taught myself to play the guitar. I taught myself to play the piano. And we used to have sheet music at home and stuff like that. And I wanted to be a songwriter, really.
From what age?
Oh, from about the age of 12, really.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to do. And I wrote songs consistently by myself from the age of 12 till I met Chris Lowe in 1981.
Yeah.
But then I did a degree in history, and then I worked for Marvel Comics as my first job.
That's
the UK
right.
Marvel Comics, where we had 7 comics a week. They used to make the colour American monthly comics into weekly black and white comics, and I had to put them together and put the editorial pages in. And that was the first time I wrote anything, actually. I decided that as various pop stars were Marvel Comics fans, I would interview them. And so I interviewed Marc Bolan, which is the first interview I ever did.
Wow. Marc Bolan was the first interview.
Yeah, in the autumn of 1975, I went to Keith Oltham's office not far from here, actually.
Yeah.
It was raining as well. And I had this ancient tape recorder that one of the graphic designers at Marvel Comics had lent me. I had never used one before. And so Mark comes in, he was in a slightly heavy phase, had enormous fingers like sausages, and he had the Marc Bolan voice, you know, like, yeah, the cat's great, you know. And I put the tape recorder down on the table, and then we went and sat on the sofa across the room. For some reason, I was too cool to take. I thought it was too committed to take the tape recorder with me. So we sat down, and Marc Bolan looked, and just without stopping talking, walked across the room, got the cassette player, and put it between us.
Oh, how sweet.
It was really sweet of him. As it happened, the cassette recorder didn't really work very well. But anyway, and then I interviewed the sensational Alex Harvey band. And I got the full PR thing. We were driven me and a friend were driven a chauffeur-driven Jag to Coventry to see them. That was my second interview. And then my third interview was going to be Paul McCartney, but they weren't having it.
Okay.
And the bass at Duellas weren't having it. So my series came to an end. Anyway, and then I worked in book publishing. And then I worked in book publishing involved with TV tie-ins, which was ITV Books. And while I was there, we did a book which I thought of with Madness, a sort of pamphlet, really, a magazine. Do you remember their film Take It or Leave It?
Yes.
And we did Take It or Leave It, the official film tie-in. And I got Steve Bush to design it, who started designing the face.
Right.
I didn't actually know Smash Hits, by the way, because I was a sort of NME reader.
Yeah.
And then I used to go meet Steve Bush to get the layouts. And my friend from Newcastle, Eric Watson, did the pictures for that. And then suddenly I went to the Smash Hits office and I met Dave Hepworth, and they loved these pictures Eric Watson had taken of Madness, which actually were very, very good. And then suddenly out of the blue, Dave Hepworth called me up and said they wanted to do a Smash Hits yearbook. And Steve Bush and I had just done the Tiswas yearbook. And so I got this job to edit the Smash Hits yearbook. Dave didn't mention to me that I was also to be news editor of Smash Hits. But I discovered that on the first day.
Did you?
Yes.
That's amazing.
And I always remember going in for this interview. I met Mark Ellen for the first time. And I was carrying a jiffy bag. And Mark said, you know, the difference between book publishing and music journalism is Book publishing people always carry jiffy bags. Music journalists always carry 12-inch cardboard envelopes. Totally right. And I remember him saying to me, "Welcome to the world of free records." And this was such a great thing, the free records.
Yeah.
You know, suddenly, my tiny little studio flat in Chelsea was just you couldn't move for records.
Fantastic.
That was very exciting.
I mean, you said that you were an NME reader. Well, I mean, I'm very similar. I wasn't a Smash Hits reader at the time. It's actually doing my job here.
He is now.
Has introduced me to the delights of Smash Hits. And you say in the interview that we're going to be playing some clips of, you say that it was quite a sophisticated mag. I mean, it wrote about all kinds of strands of music. And whilst it had a very kind of jokey tone, it loved the stuff, and that sort of it transmitted across. I mean, I wish I'd read it at the time.
Yeah, no, it was the NME was always, you know, when I became a musician or whatever, it was always I would stab you in the back. And you went, the whole music press, but not Smash Hits. But Smash Hits, we always went with enthusiasms.
Yeah.
So people would write about their personal enthusiasms in pop music.
Sure.
And people they knew were a great story.
Mm-hmm.
And also the sense of humour. I think when I was there, May 235, that started to take over. Tom Hibbert joined.
Yes,
of course.
Who was an amazing sort of Baroque writer. And Mark, you know, is a very funny writer, and Dave, you know, they're all funny writers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was a really, really important thing, and really turning pop stars into characters.
Yeah.
And all the nicknames.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was me that knighted Sir William Idle, our greatest living Englishman. That was taken because I don't remember Oberon War used to write a diary in Private Eye.
Yes.
And he used to have the thing saying, "Why has Peregrine Worththorne never been knighted?" He would call him Sir Peregrine Worththorne, our greatest living Englishman. And so I just took that and gave it to Billy Idle.
That's fantastic.
Fantastic.
I mean, again, in the interview you say that, sadly, in a way, that aesthetic went over to Q, but it's kind of curdled in the process in some sort of way.
I don't remember this specific interview, of course, but it did go to Q. But I think you see it now I think its influence in music journalism is much stronger than, for instance, you might have assumed all music journalism would be influenced by Paul Morley or Ian Penman, if you looked at them from an early 80s perspective.
Sure.
But if you look at G2...
Yeah.
G2 in The Guardian is practically the Smash Hits of our time.
Yeah, and of course the whole pop bitch aesthetic.
And the pop bitch. Although the pop bitch aesthetic is different because it's too bitchy.
Okay, too bitchy.
I mean,
and you wouldn't have printed stories about people's sexual or drug habits or whatever.
Curiously, NME, I think, was influenced by Smash Hits kind of in reverse. I mean, when people think of later writers at the end of the 80s, early 90s, like Barbara Ellen and all that,
they were more,
much closer to Smash Hits than Paul Morley. That's for sure.
And also The Face. Because The Face was started by Nick Logan.
Yeah,
of course.
And you had people like Leslie White. We tried to employ Leslie White to Smash Hits, but she went on and did journalism, Sunday Times and things. You know, Smash Hits was over the road from the NME.
That's right.
I was just about to say, because when you were reminiscing about The Office, and it just brought back these memories of working just across Carnaby Street from you guys. I mean, we must have walked past each other.
No, you could literally see into the NME's office.
Yes, and I have to say, I certainly began to feel quite threatened by Smash Hits. I mean, I knew in some way that things were changing. There was a sort of seismic shift going on.
Well, we knew that because we saw our circulation figures. We
saw your circulation figures. And I remember
us once holding up our circulation figures at our window, and you were, of course, not you personally, NME was across the road. And Smash Hits a circulation figure. There's various photographs you can find of us drinking, with a Mark with a bottle of champagne. Because our circulation has gone up to 400,000. And by the time Chris and I are we were reputedly on the best-selling issue of Smash Hits ever on the cover when it was selling 750,000 in about 19...
What issue was that?
I think that's in 1987, 1988.
Yeah.
So, of course, great to be part of something that's happening.
Yeah.
Really. And that period of pop music, 82 to 85... I mean, if you go a little bit earlier, maybe 81 to 85, is an incredible era of pop music, with probably kicked off by Dare by the Human League. Soft Cell. Culture Club, incredibly underrated, I think, as songwriters, because the pop thing is so, the visuals are so strong.
Yeah,
that second album, Culture Club, made, I remember Ronnie Gurr at Virgin phoning me up and saying, "This is their rumours."
Oh, that's brilliant.
Needless to say, I'd never listened to Rumours. But I knew what he meant by Fleetwood Mac. I knew it was a huge album. And actually, if you listen to it, it is their rumours. Every song is fantastic.
Was that Waking Up with the House on Fire? Or was that, I forget.
No, that's the third. That's the problematical third album.
First one was
Kissing to be Clever.
Second one was
eulogising about this album, and I can't remember what it's called.
Because they were essentially album artists.
I can't. But anyway, the second album is the one.
Right.
Anyway, I think this and it's a great, and it was a great time to be there.
This is a good moment. First of all, we should play the Smash Hits clip.
Yeah.
And then after that, the Ideology clip, because you talk about Culture Club very specifically in that.
Smash Hits was always, when I was there, a sincere magazine with a deep commitment to music. And also, Smash Hits was a post-punk magazine. It was a magazine with an ideology. It was a magazine that believed in good pop music can be really good and really popular. And when it's both of those things, it's fucking great.
Right.
And there was a bit of, because I was one of the starters of the inverted commentary story there. And there was a bit of that going on, but it was also, if you read it now, it reads painfully, sincerely, let me tell you. But that was then imitated by successive generations of people.
Right.
In fact, Q now is a really bizarre, ossified, it has an ossified style based on Mark Ellen and Steve Bush and Neil Tennant and Dave Hepburn. And everything's inverted commas. It's really, really horribly done because they haven't advanced it. It's Smash Hits we used to call it. We would only use jokes at a amount of time. We'd say, right, that's old bollocks. We've got to have new bollocks now.
Yes, we did used to say that. I think that's to be fair to Q. I think when was that interview?
96.
Yeah, there was a period where Q became sort of unbelievably ironic.
Yeah.
And it didn't really work.
I mean, the only bit that worked actually was Tom Hibbert's "Who the Hell Do You Think You Are" sort of column.
And that was genius.
Which was absolutely fabulous.
Genius, yeah.
But when it was applied to the writing about music, it sort of
wasn't their function.
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
Smash Hit. So I mentioned the pieces of yours. So you mentioned Soft Cell earlier. The first piece from July 82, which is an interview with Mark Armand. And it's actually really... It's very sweet. It kind of gets to the sort of vulnerability of Mark at that point. He talks about panic attacks and things you hear so much about today, but I get big bouts of nerves and occasional bouts of depression. Reading this made me wonder whether Soft Cell were an influence on the Pet Shop Boys. You talk about the impassive David Ball. And
he went to the same school as Chris Lowe.
Did he? Okay, so I mean, there's obvious parallels there, but as an electronic duo, and probably the first electronic pop duo to have a huge hit as they did that factor into your design of?
It did in one way. When I first met Chris and we started talking about music, we both liked the single. I think their finest moment, in fact, Soft Cell had out, Bedsitter.
Yeah, I love
which is an amazing piece of social realism, actually.
So dark.
But also it's about what we did, wandering around Soho, going to clubs and stuff, or going to heaven or something. And that thing of the sort of imagined glamour of where you're going to, and then you go back to your little bedsit, little studio flat on the King's Road. And although I've never really done social realism, that song was a sort of influence.
Right.
And I've often said that Chris said to me, can't you make your lyrics more sexy? Because my lyrics were very singer-songwriter, poetical.
Yes.
They still are, really, in a way. But he was right. And West End Girls is a result of that. So I don't think West End Girls isn't indebted to Soft Cell because it's really indebted to Grandmaster Flash, but there was a sort of an aesthetic there that we sympathised with.
We can play it now because I think this fits. Is that you talk about how in the interview about how the 90s were actually what everyone claims the 80s were, where the 90s was about greed and making money, and the 80s had a strong ideological element, even in the most frothy pop.
To this day, completely underrated. I mean, I'm glad I said that because I still think that. If you were to go back in a time machine to 1982, you'd be surprised at how ragged the whole thing is. Boy George's clothes are made by someone on a sewing machine in the East End or something.
Yeah.
And it's all quite homemade and a bit naive. People are reading books and getting a few ideas. Steve Strange is watching Visconti films.
Absolutely.
And everyone, apart from Gary Newman, is left-wing.
Yep.
I mean, there's the embarrassing thing where Paul Weller has to go on the Red Wedge tour and discover, to his horror, Gary Kemper's band of ballets on that night. They're meant to be Tory scum, but they're not. They're left-wing too.
No, it's absolutely...
And it's a very different time. Whereas by the 90s, everyone knows how the system works.
Yeah.
Because the 90s is the heyday of the whole CD thing. Yeah. Everyone knows how it works.
Yeah.
You do Top of the Pops. Yeah. You're on CD UK and that program plays videos on Saturday mornings, and everyone knows how it all works. And it's become much more about money.
Come a chameleon. You come and go. You come and go.
And also, all of those groups that were around then, funnily enough, were influenced by punk. You know, if you take Culture Club was an idealistic idea. You know, you had the drag queen, a Jewish guy, a black guy, and a white middle-class suburban boy. And that's why they called it Culture Club. It had an ideology.
Right.
Music tended to have an ideology in the 1980s. When Chris and I first started, you know, we were number one West End girls. Chris' famous remarks were on Top of the Pops and the camera panned towards us. Chris hissed at me, "Don't look triumphant." Well, of course, nowadays you would routinely be triumphant.
Right.
You know, because you felt that you had some kind of integrity and that success wasn't the issue.
Right.
Great to have success, but success wasn't the issue. The issue was, wasn't it great to do something great in a mass market and change things?
In a western town, a dead-end world, the eastern boys and western girls. Western girls.
Well, I think that's spot on then, spot on now.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly the first half of the 80s felt fantastically exciting in a way. For me, I think things petered out a bit when indie turned into a genre of music rather than the idea of independence.
See, indie for us may as well not have existed.
Right.
It wasn't an issue. For me, the story is the 80s, because we're the second half of the 80s.
Right.
The first half is gorgeous pop music that conquers the world.
Yeah.
The famous photograph of Boy George and Annie Lennox taken for smash hits that becomes the cover of Newsweek in America.
Yeah.
Amazing.
An amazing moment. And the second half of the 80s is when dance music comes in. Suddenly, on Top of the Pops, there are people with turntables.
Yeah.
Our future manager, Dave Durrell, being one. And with Mars, pump up the volume.
Yeah.
And we're part of that. We're all remixes by Shep Pettibone and Frankie Knuckles and what have you.
Yeah.
House music's come in, changed everything completely. And in fact, by the end of the 80s, house music is the sound of pop. It's actually Stock Aitken and Waterman making a house-derived kind of pop music.
Yes.
And that changes everything.
Stock Aitken and Waterman also, to some degree, like yourselves, drew stuff from high NRG.
Yeah, high energy, which of course comes from disco. That was the late 70s, as well as being punk, is also the great era of disco pop songs, which is a fantastic era of songwriting. To this day, I think, underrated.
I love the fact that you were sent to interview the police, and it was through that trip, the police whom you were bored.
I didn't know.
But through that, you got to meet Bobby O. You went and
I remember Mark. I was doing the Smash Hits yearbook, 1984 in 1983, and the police were the hugest thing in the world. And also, it's a brilliant song, Every Breath You Take, and an incredibly good record. And anyway, you had to go for one night to New York, and we were obviously getting blasé at Smash Hits because no one would go. and I thought, well, I'm not going to go. I'm not a rock fan. I never really listened to them. And anyway, my arm was twisted, and I go. And then I said to Chris, I could meet Bobby O. Now, the Bobby O thing comes partly out of Smash Hits. Chris hears... To this day, Chris would do this. Chris is the kind of person that asks the DJ what the record is.
Right.
He hears this record. He asks the DJ, "Is Passion by the Flirts?" He buys it on import, costs £5, and he says, "This is it." And so this record becomes our musical template. Anyway. right by my desk at Smash Hits is the dumper box, where all this tsunami of records comes in every day. Most of them just go in the dumper box. After work, I'm such a new pop fan, I will stay and go through the dumper box. In case there's anything good.
Yeah. Fantastic.
I discover a record by Phyllis Nelson. I phone up the PR and say, this record's amazing. It becomes number one.
Move closer. Yeah.
Move closer. What a beautiful record. It's in the dumper box. Anyway, I then discover, to my astonishment, all these records, and they're all produced by Bobby Orlando. And so I started taking them home and say, look, there's another Bobby O record. And then you may recall, over the road from Smash Hits, on the same side as the NME, there's a weird place which has got sort of plastic showgirls' legs going up and down, and they sell tourist crap.
It's all coming back.
Do you remember it? But they've got a DJ.
Right.
The DJ plays Bobby O.
Right.
He keeps playing I'm So Hot For You, which, in an amazing moment, Dave Hepworth makes Single of the Week in Smash Hits, because he likes it as well. And he compares him to Bruce Springsteen. And so all these things come together. So I go to New York, do the police thing. Actually, it's quite amazing. They play Shea Stadium. And then they're number one in America. The entire American rock journalist corps are sitting around, and the only person Sting talks to is me. And I said to him, I went to the same school as you, so we talk about we did go to the same school in Newcastle, so we talk about that. And then the next morning, I go and see Bobby O. I've phoned him up, and he said, hey, come round. And I go in there, he says, let's make a record.
Yeah.
And a month later, we're in the studio in New York making the original West End Girls.
That's fantastic.
And when I came back to Smash Hits, I told everyone I was going to meet Bobby. All Smash Hits people knew about Bobby O. If you ask Ian Birch or Mark Hamill, remember, they'd all know this. And there was a sort of celebration in the office that I'd met Bobby O. We're now going to make a record.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
And I won't let anyone mention this in Smash Hits. The Pet Shop Boys, I won't mention when the name arrives. I won't mention it. It's only ever mentioned when I go on holiday. Someone puts a joking reference to it in the bit section. And then a month later, we come back and we record it. And I'm too embarrassed to play it on West End Girls because I'm speaking on it. So I played them the 3 other tracks. And then Scoffer, David Bostock, one of the designers, I think now publishing director of EMAP, makes copies of the tape for me, and he says, hey, there's a great song where you sort of rap. And I said, oh, God, you haven't heard that one. And he said, no, it's great. And that's sort of the beginning of that.
That's fantastic.
That is incredible.
That's really great.
I mean, we have to talk about this. I mean, it's happened to some other writers who have, as it were, they're poachers-turned-gamekeepers.
Or the other way around.
I mean, it must have been extraordinary for you to be interviewing these seminal pop figures in between 82 and 85, and then, lo and behold, you're one of them.
I think it was weirder for them. From my perspective, I've been writing songs since about 1967, actually, it's the reality. So I'm quite an experienced songwriter.
Yeah, this is what we're always aiming
By
for.
1982,
Yeah, exactly.
Chris and I met and started writing songs before I'm at Smash Hits, actually.
Right.
So I have 2 careers. I have my publishing / journalism career, which people say, what would you have done if Smash Hits hadn't happened? I say, well, I'd probably worked for Q. And because when I left, they wanted me to be editor of Smash Hits, actually. And it was quite a big thing to be offered that and to turn it down at the age of 31 to become a pop star. But anyway, it worked out. But I know after that, you'd be at the San Remo Song Festival. And Duran are there, and Spandau, the Smiths. And Paul Weller. Paul Weller, I always remember saying to me, because West End Girls had been number 1 in America by this point, he said, sort of amazed about that, because they always tell me I sound too British. And I said, that's what they like about it. Yeah. It sounds British.
Did your experience as a writer help you when it came to dealing with interviews in the media later on?
That is the thing, because people always think, they used, in the NME in the 80s, there's always a thing about perfect pop. And there was a certain amount of bullshit in that, I think, really. And people think, you worked out how to write a perfect pop song. Well, I mean, anyone could do that if they had the nous. Or assuming there is such a thing as a perfect pop song. You don't have to be a journalist. The one thing I took away from it, which I still have to this day, is you can sort of see how the interview's going. Yeah. Because you've done it yourself.
Yeah.
And so it would make me sometimes a bit tetchy, particularly in the 80s. Because we had a certain amount of hostility because I'd been a journalist. So people thought it wasn't authentic, this thing. These are 2 clever guys who are sort of playing the playing the industry a bit or something like
Yeah.
that. And of course, So wasn't like that.
No, of
It So
course.
isn't like, I mean,
Right.
we're both in some ways quite naive, really, I think. And I think that's why we're still here. But so I would like say, okay, that's the end of the interview. Turn the cassette recorder off, throw it across the room at him, and because I could, and then the PR would say, "Oh, you know, he's your biggest fan in Belgium," and I just brought the interview to a halt after 10 minutes, and because I used to get paranoid about it.
But didn't you also realise? I mean, I've read a lot of interviews with you in my job here, and you give good quotes consistently, and you must have known the value of giving good quote, because I know that some journalists really I hear the taped interviews where the journalist is asking a question and they get kind of monosyllabic answers, and you knew how to kind of give them a lot of meat to put on.
Yeah, but that's your perspective of looking at it.
Okay.
My perspective is I quite like talking about music.
Yeah. Yes,
and
fair
let's
enough.
face it, I know a lot about the Pet Shop Boys. And also, Chris Lowe gives amazing quotes.
Yes.
We did an interview for The Guardian recently, which they took.
It was so funny.
Well, and actually,
I was laughing
Yes.
out
the funny
loud.
quotes are from Chris gives this incredible quote, because this is when I turned back into a journalist, which I was writing the piece. When he says, although Neil was an altar boy, he has no relationship with gospel music. It's such a ridiculous thing to say.
I was roaring with laughter at that.
And the brilliant quote that finishes the piece, this was Alexis, wasn't it? Alexis
Yes.
Petrini. And you say something like, are we going to run out of ideas? That's when you call Brian Eno.
But Chris says again. I always think Chris gives the really good quotes. Whereas
They're so dry, aren't they?
I tend to, the way it works in interviews with us is I give the party line and the info.
Right.
And Chris just sits there and then puts gags in all the way down.
But it's a great double act.
No, it is. Yeah, it is.
It's amazing. How long? It's how many years have Pet Shop Boys been?
35 years or something.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But it's not contrived, though.
No.
It is. It's just the way it is.
And it's pleasure. You still get enormous pleasure from doing it.
Well, I'm talking about interviews. I was making the records, yes, and writing songs.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a lot of fun. You know, we have a studio in Berlin now. I say studio. I said earlier, it's just a little room, a bit like this.
I'm sure it's not like this.
And we sit there, and it's it's fun.
Again-
Sometimes nothing happens. We go out for dinner or lunch or something.
Sure. But you have, I mean, in this interview that we're running through, the audio interview, you talk about having fun in the studio. Then 1996.
Yeah.
You have fun in the studio, and the process of making records is inherently enjoyable process.
Well, funny enough, on the way here, because we used to work in not far Nottingham Gate, in Salm West, and throughout the late 80s and all the 90s, we worked consistently in Salm West. And I was just thinking, because it's now being developed into flats.
That's right.
And it was before that, you probably know it was Island
Absolutely,
Studios.
Basin Street,
and
yeah.
they had a flat upstairs that both Jimi Hendrix and Bob Marley had lived in. And,
Blue Clark time.
and it was sort of Trevor Horn's little place.
Yes.
Yes.
That was a great... I always like being involved in an organisation. I always miss, in a way, having a proper job. I used to love going to Smash Hits, and it was such fun, and the conversation was good, and we had music playing and stuff. And likewise, going into Salm West, you'd know the person on reception. There was a woman who ran Trevor's business called Lola, we used to know. And downstairs, there was Marco, the Italian chef, who became Madonna's chef. And then at 10:30, they'd serve Jamaican food, where amazingly it was served by Lucky Gordon.
Really?
No.
From,
The Lucky Gordon.
yeah, so when we were making Nothing Has Been Proved for the film Scandal, I said to Lucky, there's a line that goes, "It's a scandal. Can you come in and say that?" But he wanted, I can't remember,
lot of money.
He wanted 50 grand or something. It was 15. And I said, we can't pay that. And I was watching the TV series recently. I thought it was cheeky of me to have asked him that, really. Because when you see what you went through, it's not just a bit of fun,
No,
really.
it's fair.
No.
That's fair enough.
And actually, it was sort of... It suddenly occurred to me, it didn't occur to me before, that it was a bit cheeky of me to ask them that. And we had the Jamaican food, and then George Michael would be always in the studio, and his dog Hippie wandering around, and other artists, Paul Morley might suddenly appear. And it was a really fantastic time.
Fantastic.
If we jump forward to the 90s when the audio interview was done by Steven Daly, we've included this piece where you celebrate the power of negative thinking or hate. Let's just call it hate. You celebrate hate. It's very funny. And so this was for Details originally, I think you said, published in Details in America.
Yes, it was.
And
Yeah.
Steven Daly was doing the interview for Details with you. And I suddenly realised you were talking about the bilingual album, and I actually reviewed that for Rolling Stone. And in this piece, you take a huge dig at Rolling Stone, which is very funny. It all kind of some strange serendipitous way.
Yes.
You talk about the people who are in control of the music business now are conservatives who think that in the 60s everyone was much more talented than they are now. It's all about
Britpop.
Rolling Stone rock culture, which is essentially a fear of the new. Rolling Stone's idea of a musician is Jerry Garcia. Look at all the new artists: Curtis Stigers, Michael Bolton, Lenny Kravitz, all of them living in the past. Hard to argue with that.
I'm afraid it is.
Hard to argue with that. Shall we hear the third clip?
This is really interesting because I think a lot of people perceive you as being ironic, inverted commas, and you flatly,
It's a curse for us because
Yes.
we've written I've Got the Brains, You've Got the Looks, There's Not Some Money,
Yeah.
which is basically a punk song,
Yeah.
and it's ironic.
Yeah.
There are a few other ironic things.
But
the cover
you're-
of the U2 thing is sort of ironic.
Right.
But generally, we are actually sort of heartbreakingly heartfelt,
Yeah.
I think, a lot of the time.
Let's listen to this clip.
That is the thing that we're talking about Britain the last 10 years and pop culture. When we first started, we occasionally did ironic songs like Let's Make Lots of Money or Shopping. And now irony is the mainstream of popular culture in terms of TV and music. Humour is irony. And it's just boring. Because actually it's a way for people of not actually being funny. They're just kind of ironic, the raised eyebrows.
Right.
And I must say, I'm really, really fed up with that.
Well, I personally think that, I don't know if it was when you were there,
I
but
think, by the way, it's one of the reasons that that Britpop doesn't work in America. It's because it's so ironic.
Right.
And you can't do irony in America. In
Well,
a mouse, it's too big a market.
And also
It's interesting that only Oasis, who are not remotely ironic,
Right,
who are
they're
completely not
post-ironic.
or anti-ironic, really, they are the ones that have had success in America because they're definitely not ironic. And when we had a hit with Let's Make Lots of Money in America in the 80s, which was in the top 10 in America, I think it was taken ironically. I think
kind of like Born in the USA.
I think it was a bit of a, yeah, let's go for it, guys.
It was a manifesto.
Bobby O said to us, "This is exactly what I think about everything." And we were like, well, we just used to carry on it. But I think at that period, I'm paranoid about Jarvis.
Right.
You do
Right.
talk about Jarvis in the interview.
Common People comes out. Common People is a sort of an amazing Pet Shop Boys record.
Yes. Yes, that's
Yes.
And so is Disco 2000, the
Yeah,
next
yeah.
one.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
definitely.
And so I feel a bit paranoid because there's always been new Pet Shop Boys.
Right.
But there've never been, I mean, as I used to say to people, they've made records for longer than we have, because they have. They started in 1981. And they make a really amazing Pet Shop Boys record in a way. I know they won't think of it like that.
Yeah, of course.
But I think I feel a bit paranoid about
Yeah,
it.
no, it's interesting. That part.
And Damon, of course, is doing
Yes.
Charming Man, all those kind of things.
I mean, that paranoia has sort of always been there in you. I mean, in this interview, you talk about when you first heard Blue Monday, and it kind of puts chill down. If you thought, because
They've beaten us to it.
They've beaten us to it.
We did think that, yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause we thought we were the only people who knew, because the music business is so sort of heterosexual, even though it's the world of Boy George and Mark Armour at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
We knew the secret of gay disco. And we'd actually written this little demo studio. We'd written this But it was called I'm Keeping My Fingers Crossed. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. And then this record comes in the amazing artwork. Which is always a huge deal for us, the artwork. And I just felt like bursting into tears. And I said to Chris, these gloom merchants.
How dare they? Yeah.
How have they done this?
Yeah.
How do they know about this?
Yeah.
And then they go and make a record with Arthur Baker.
Yes.
And I'm obsessed by Planet Patrol and all those records at this time. And anyway, it all works out. But it was a big moment. And then when we got to know Bernard, it was interesting. We had very, very similar record collections.
Right.
Bernard and Chris and me.
Yeah.
We had he liked Tallow Disco.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I remember Betty Page, the record we were interviewing us very early on, she thought we'd invented Italian disco as a sort of joke. And she didn't know the records. And again, it was thanks to the dumper boxes.
Things like La Bionda and all that sort of stuff. Whenever, some of the early interviews with New Order, the first thing I did when I went to New York was go down to the Paradise Garage.
First thing we did.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and Larry Levan and
it was amazing.
Just fantastic stuff.
I like what you say about ultimately not being ironic and even being a little naive. I think is because it doesn't matter how clever and beautifully packaged and conceptualized pop is, if it doesn't have a heart, it doesn't endure, I think. Exactly. And some of my favourite songs, I've been very moved by Pet Shop Boys songs. I'm thinking of things like Young Offender, In Denial. They're very, very moving and deeply felt.
Well, they're songs that come out of experience and truth.
Exactly.
And that is to our latest album, Hotspot. You know, it's sort of inspired by spending a lot of time in Berlin.
Yeah.
And again, there's a lot of personal truth in that, which I'm always uncomfortable talking about, really. But nonetheless, it's there. It's definitely there.
I also think your delivery, because your delivery is so unique and sort of pop music, and yet it fits perfectly with the music. This is an extraordinary thing. It's not deadpan delivery, but it's sort of was kind of wistful, sort of.
It is, and it's a contrast often to the music, which is often very lush, or it's dance music. It's very up dance music. Yeah. Chris has often compared that I take something up and make it down.
Right.
But then I kind of think that's what we do.
Yeah.
Someone called our music, and we nearly called an album Happy Sad, because they said some Italian journalist said that's what we made.
Yeah.
And that's the contrast between the two personalities.
Yeah. We should mention, of course, in addition to Hotspot, that came out in January. Next month sees the reissue of the two great books that the great Chris Heath wrote about you. I've actually got my original copy of
Photographs of
versus
Smith.
America. Wonderful cover, wonderful photograph, wonderful photographer. I loved this book when it came out, and I loved Chris's relationship with you guys, his take on what Pet Shop Boys meant. Just calling it Pet Shop Boys versus America was rather bold. Just tell us briefly about the two books, Literally and Versus America.
Well, Chris Heath, of course, came out of... So Chris Heath joined Smash Hits, I think, about 84, and I remember... And Mark Ellen brought him in, I don't know where he met him, to do a sort of Christmas flexi disc or something like that we did, which was
flexi disc.
I might have got that wrong, but it's something like that. And then he started writing for us, and he was such a pop fan. But then we really got to know. And then I left because he interviewed us for Smash Hits, and I'd always been obsessed by this book about the Beatles called Love Me Do. Michael Braun. And, you know, you could see that in second-hand bookshops, you see the paperback, the Penguin paperback. It's about the Beatles early in 63, I think. And he goes on tour with them. And, you know, he interviews sort of Paul and Ringo, and they're in bed sharing a room. In single beds, I hasten to add.
Sort of like Eric and Ernie.
And Dave Rimmer did a two-part interview with Culture Club in Japan for Smash.
That's right.
Yes.
And I had links with Faber, and Faber, the publishers, who actually published my lyrics, whenever it was, and I said, why don't we do this as a book, and I'll sell it to Faber. And it's going to be like that Michael Brown book, Love Me Do. And Pete Townsend was the music editor then at Faber, and so I sell him this book, and Like Punk Never Happened. It's a very good book. In fact, they're going to reissue it.
You came up with that phrase, I gather.
Well, it came from an interview with Paul Weller, where I was... And this is the interesting thing about, you don't expect this in Smash Hits, because people always think it's about the colour of your socks.
Yeah.
Something's never mentioned in Smash Hits, actually. It's always like, what colour is Tuesday?
Yeah.
Not the colour of your socks. It's more psychedelic than that, because of Tom Hibbert. And I'm having a go at Paul Weller about money. And Paul Weller says something like, it's like punk never happened. Yeah. He's slagging off Spandau Ballet. And those, that breed of contemporary pop star. And this phrase sort of, I think he doesn't even say it's like punk never happened, but that phrase entered the Smash Hits lexicon from this interview. And then Dave, right towards the end of writing this book, said, why don't we just call it It's Like Punk Never Happened? And I think you sort of then rewrote the opening chapter.
Yeah.
And it was a good title.
I think the subtitle was Culture Club and the New Pop. Am I right?
Because by the time we'd finished it, you were suddenly aware that maybe the era had come to an end. Live Aid was a big thing.
Yeah.
Now at Live Aid, Duran, they had the power station and everything. Do you remember that? And it felt like the whole thing got so big it was going to fall apart. And it did.
And also, older acts suddenly got resurrected by it. And
older acts started making videos.
Yes. True.
And Americans suddenly are taking over. Madonna has taken over. Whitney Houston's about to appear.
Yeah.
Prince is amazing and makes amazing videos. And no one can touch him musically. So there's sort of the writings on the wall a bit. And that's why, even at that point, we could see that maybe this was in a way an elegy for a pop period. Annoyingly, because when we sold the book to Pete Townsend, for quite a big advance actually, it was inconceivable at the end of 1984 that Culture Club could go, as we would say, down the dumper, because they were like the Beatles. By the time the book came out, it was, for a while anyway, over.
Yeah. Fantastic book. I love Dave's
great.
Books.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Anyway, that's coming out again as well. So Chris Heath. So Michael Braun, Let Me Do. I only have one idea. That book. Let's do Michael Braun, Let Me Do with the Pet Shop Boys now.
Yeah.
And so Chris Heath starts following us around. The first book, Pet Shop Boys, literally, about our first tour, is a bit more earnest. It's got analysis, as well as reportage. The second book, where we go to tour America with this ridiculous theatrical show, which is designed for arenas and now crammed into small theatres.
Right.
So dancers are changing on the sidewalk in certain cities. Chris Heath and Penny Smith are there.
Yeah.
And there's no analysis. It's simply reportage.
That's fantastic.
And as I said in the new introduction, if I don't think I said in that one, we've got Chris Heath's got his notebook. Everyone just gets used to the fact that they're having a conversation. Chris Heath is standing between you, writing it down. And actually, it still happens because we do a book every year, called Pet Shop Boys annually.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and Chris Heath still does it. We've been doing this over 30 years now. And
amazing.
Chris Lowe and I think, start playing up to the notebook a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's been written down. Although there are times, even now, we'll be having a conversation in a car going somewhere and we're having fun. Chris Lowe will say, "Oh, where's Chris Heath? We're just wasting this."
If Chris isn't writing it down, it never happens. Yes. That's
fantastic.
Brilliant.
And then, of course, he goes on and does the Rob Williams books. And our books are actually, he does gives us the manuscripts. And I'm afraid we cut out every swear word.
Oh, how disappointing.
Any reference to sex, probably.
Yeah.
Etc. And whereas he then does Robbie Williams.
Yeah.
And Robbie Williams doesn't cut out
anything.
Because have you read those two audios?
No.
I know what Chris Heath is like, and he's got a project. I think we can expect another one in 10 years' time, no matter where Robbie's career is, because he's going to have this monumental Balzac-esque, cycle of books about someone's whole career. Right. And it'll be incredible.
Yeah.
And Robbie doesn't edit himself. We do edit ourselves.
Yeah, okay. That's
even while we're speaking sometimes. And also, or we'll say, that's not going in the book.
Right.
But Robbie doesn't have that. So this style reached its full fruition in those two.
Well, it doesn't surprise me because he's been incapable of editing himself in his life.
He's a gift to
to
someone like Chris Heath.
Pet Shop Boys have endured for such a long time, it's extraordinary how you stay relevant, stay vibrant, and continue to enjoy what you're doing. In a way, we can move into a sort of subsequent era of British pop culture, talking about Andrew Weatherall, if you wouldn't mind. I'd be interested to know. So we lost Andrew Weatherall last Sunday, and he represented a new chapter. I mean, along with a bunch of other people, Danny Rampling, etc.
Yeah.
This was a kind of new chapter in sort of club culture, drug culture, etc., especially in London, Manchester, and other cities. Do you remember how you felt when all that was happening? You know, acid house, and then going to the Boyzone era.
Yes.
Not Boyzone, the boy band.
No, yes. Yeah. Well, I mentioned earlier, everything changed when house music started.
Absolutely.
And house music had a hit. I think the first hit is Love Can't Turn Around.
Jack Master. Funk. Yeah,
Farley
Jack Master.
Daryl
Pandy.
Yes. There you go.
Pandy was the singer.
And
He was the
so
singer.
in 1988, we bring our... In 1987, our album, actually, the first track, One More Chance, has got kind of a house piano thing. Right, starts with that. And as I said, that comes the sound of pop music. In 1989, Chris and I go to Manchester because Bernard Sumner, who knows our designer, who's Manchester Mark Farrow, is making a solo album. And I'd said, tell Bernard Sumner I'll do something with him, the collaboration if he wants. And then Bernard says, yes. Now I panic. I said, Chris, you've got to come. And so we both drive up and we meet Bernard. And then we discover he's doing it with Johnny Marr.
So this is electronic.
So this is
Getting away with
electronic, yeah. But at this point, it's Bernard's solo album. And it takes him a while to define that it's going to be a pop duo called electronic. So we go so the first time we go to the Haçienda is with Bernard. And this is as the Manchester thing is exploding.
Right.
And that's, we probably have mixed feelings about it because there's a sort of a sense that some people think that Manchester's invented this whole thing. and you think, we were in the Paradise Garage 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And so there's sort of competitiveness about that. But nonetheless, it's an amazing thing. And we love it. And we go there quite a lot. Over the next few years, we do a concert for Derek Jarman, actually, weirdly, at the Haçienda. That era... we're influenced by the funky drummer loop. Being boring is based, starts with the funky drummer loop. As to it being more, I think we just felt we were sort of distantly part of it rather than influence. I think we felt we'd been on the same journey,
right?
Rather than thinking, oh, this is amazing, which we did. We did like the records. I mean, Happy Mondays, and
which was the first thing that Weatherall did, I believe, was the Hallelujah remix.
Yes,
when he'd never even been in a studio, really didn't know what he was doing, and I think that's probably why those remixes, particularly Loaded, the Primal Scream one, were so new and fresh.
I mean, it's interesting that when Primal Scream kind of reverted to type for their following album, they just became another rock band again.
Almost a parody.
Almost a parody, absolutely.
I've always loved that song, Rocks Off.
Yes.
But at the time, I said, this is like the Ruttles for the Rolling Stones. And also, I was always amazed when the first hit single, Bobby doesn't sing on it, really.
No, that's right.
Because it's a remix. He shakes maracas on the
and there's just a one-line song.
Loaded.
Sort of from the emotion.
Yes.
It says, I don't want to lose your love.
But, no, I mean, so Andrew Weatherall, I like where he renamed himself Andrew Weatherall. None of this Andy stuff.
He's still Andy at the time.
He is, yes.
Whilst one hates the hipster beard, he had the real thing. He ended up with this magnificent beard and stuff, looking like sort of 19th century sort of ship's captain.
Do you think he was the sort of hipster?
Well, he'd probably hate you. He'd probably hate you to say it. I know, because I've been conveyed via Bill Brewster and Frank Brocklin's sort of dance culture in the last sort of 20 years of my life. I know a lot of people who know him. I never met him myself, and no one has a bad word to say about him. Apparently, he is just the sweetest, funniest man. And when he died, my Facebook feed was just awash with. I mean, in a way that I've never seen before.
There's been a real outpouring of grief.
Well, partly because he's so young, 56.
Very young. I was horrified.
So as part of our tribute to him, we're including the audio interview that Bill Brewster did with him in 2009. So I thought maybe we'd just listen to a minute of that, just to remember Andrew.
Obviously, there's a certain amount of kind of ego, because it's quite exciting to play records when you've kind of seen a room full of people kind of light up in that way. I mean, was that an attractive thing as well when you started doing it?
Not to start with, because a lot of the time DJ was one step above bottle washer. It was only when it started, people were so desperate for heroes that they thought DJs would be good ones, you know what I mean? And I'll be honest with you, I did kind of fall for it a bit, hook, line and sinker, because being such a big music fan, buying the NME and the magazines, all of a sudden you find yourself in them, it can turn a young man's head. And I did go a bit silly for quite a number of years. Then you throw the obvious drug into the equation as well, which is super duper ego expanding powder. And you do get sucked. I don't sympathise with people that go on that star trip, but I can empathise with them.
I mean, it's a really endearing interview, actually. He comes over really well in it. And he is someone who experienced this extraordinary sort of cult acclaim and then slowly sort of pulled back from it, kind of grew up and became a much more appealing character.
He could have been Fatboy Slim. He could have been a superstar DJ. He could have still been what we now call the EDM circuit in America, playing Las Vegas for vast amounts of money. Never wanted to do that. It was actually antithetical to everything that he believed a DJ
also that's
should be.
I think that's a different generation, really. DJ.
I mean, he'd certainly been, he'd have fitted with the Fatboy Slim generation of superstar DJs if he'd chosen to. Anyway, good man. I can take some of his mixes, because they always tend to have the same groove, which actually kind of, we played a whole bunch in the off scene, and it's all that slightly baggy Manchester groove.
I think they dated a little bit, actually, funny enough, in a way that some of the more sort of electronic remix of that period hasn't. But what I liked about him, and this comes through in the audio, is actually just how eclectic his taste was. He really was, he mentions... I mean, there's one of the pieces that we're featuring is a piece by Push from 91, and the whole Primal Screamadelica thing is very, very new at this point. And he talks about, of all things, he talks about Tom Waits's Kentucky Avenue in this piece, which you really wouldn't expect, as well as talking about Balearic Boom and all kinds of other things, and Terry Farley and so forth. But he comes over really, really well in it, and it made me realise just actually how... He says he was never even in the studio at the same time as Primal Scream.
That's right.
He was working on that stuff. I mean, I do love that record. It's obviously not all just him. Jimmy Miller, of course, produces Moving On Up, and they all do that incredible mix of Higher Than the Sun. But, I mean, it's an exciting time, that kind of birth of kind of indie dance out of Manchester, I suppose, and remixes of Happy Mondays and so forth. And you've outlived all of that. You have somehow survived and outlived every new iteration of kind of youth quakery.
I think it's because right at the beginning, our aim was only to be part of our own thing.
Yes.
And you could bring people in it. So you could find yourself in a studio with Johnny Marr or Liza Minnelli.
Yeah.
And it made equal sense. The project was big enough to include those things. And that's how we... So in Britpop, Chris and I bring out Bilingual, which has got lyrics in Spanish. So we're not... We do follow the latest dance fashion to an extent, but we don't follow necessarily... We always swim against the tides.
Very successfully, because certainly the way I've always perceived you has been in a completely separate place to everything else that was going on in the mainstream at the time.
I think that's probably how we perceive it as well.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable with being a kind of national institution now?
National treasure.
A national treasure.
That's if we are. I think it's a little more uneasy than that.
Yeah,
I mean, like Madness or a national treasure.
Right.
The Pet Shop Boys sort of are. But it's not. I don't think it's quite as straightforward as that.
Right. What are the albums that you're proudest of from the last, say, 20 years?
I love the last 3 albums we've made with Stuart Price, because for the first time we became electronic purists. We've never been before. Every album has got acoustic instruments on it before that. And we've had long flirtation with orchestras. On our album Trevor Horn, which I love, by the way, for mid-noughties, there's an orchestra, I think, on every track apart from one. Yeah. So with this, we went back to a basics we'd never really had of being electronic purists. And I've always loved electronic music. Yeah. It's we're talking about basic electronic sound has always thrilled me. Yeah. If I hear at the stop, I Feel Love now, I'm still going to love it, I'm afraid, even though it's 45 years old or something now. And so I'm very proud of those 3 albums. I probably don't necessarily think in terms of albums. What I'm proud of is this catalogue of songs we've written and recorded over this period of time. Yeah. And also how they're a sort of social history of... So the first albums are spoofing Thatcherism. Yeah. By the time we get to 2006, we're having a go at New Labour over ID cards and things. And by the, we did an EP last year called Agenda of political songs. Absolutely. What are we going to do about the rich? Yes. And so there is a sort of a social history element to the Pet Shop Boys. Well, that I can't help being there because it's all around us, and I'm always influenced by current events. But
also a 35-year career allows that in a way that most pop careers, which are been and gone within 4 years, let's say, don't. But if you can sustain what you do for that sort of period of time, that allows that to become that, a social history, absolutely.
Well, it's been such a joy talking with you about smash hits and about Pet Shop Boys and, the whole history of British pop culture. So thank you so much for coming in and answering these questions.
I'll whisk through a few of the things that's coming
do some whiskage.
Alan Walsh interviewing Cilla Black, Melody Maker, 65, and she says, "What's happened to all the songwriters? All I seem to get these days are poor imitations of Bacharach." Wasn't it... Bacharach, who said one of his favourite versions of one of his songs was... No,
it was actually Randy Newman.
Randy Newman said his favourite version of one of his songs was Cilla Black's. She really cared about the songwriters.
And Burt Bacharach, favourite recording of his entire career, still singing Alfie.
And in the audio interview with Steven Daly, funny enough, he mentions Brill Building, and you say something that I really liked about Brill Building pop, which is the great Brill Building songs, in which we include Bacharach and also tangentially Randy Newman on the West Coast. He said the great thing about them is that they're simple but sophisticated.
I think even now, when you get a songwriting team that produces a song like Happy, that is simple but sophisticated.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also a Northern Soul banger.
Yeah, it is. It's a sort of a holy grail song.
Yeah.
Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along.
Talking about songwriting, very briefly, Jimi Hendrix record Mirror 67 says, "I can't write no happy songs. Foxy Lady is about the only happy song I've written. I don't feel very happy when I start writing." And this is curious because I don't listen to Jim's lyrics much because that's not why I listen to Jimmy. I listen to this extraordinary sort of maelstrom of sound. But his lyrics were pretty miserable. But at the time he said that and written that song, 67, by all accounts, he was as happy as Larry. He was having the time of his life.
But it's a well-known fact, when you're a songwriter, the most difficult thing to write is something happy.
Yes.
It is luck, in some ways, to come up with a very simple, happy idea that doesn't just sound banal. Whereas moody music with interesting chords is easier to do.
What's the happiest song you've ever written?
Well, we didn't write most of it. C'est Vida.
C'est Vida, right.
And that's based on a
bilingual.
Yes, it's based on a Brazilian song. And then probably the bit I've put in is the middle bit, which is actually quite sad.
Yes.
But Jimi Hendrix, you mentioned the lyrics. I never thought of Jimi Hendrix as a songwriter until Rod Stewart covered Angel.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful song.
Yes, it is.
I'm a huge Jimi Hendrix fan. He was a marvellous songwriter when he was given the time and the space to do it. And unfortunately, the last 2 years of his career, he has been flogged to death on the road by his manager.
He was, that's right.
And and his songwriting literally went right down the toilet. Moving swiftly on to Caroline Boucher, in disc...
Or Boucher.
Boucher. Disc in 1974. She's interviewing Stacia, the dancer with Hawkwind.
Oh, yes.
And she says that Stacia is a whole heap of woman who got up on stage with no clothes on to dance with Hawkwind 3 years ago and has never really got down or put her clothes back on since. I saw Hawkwind a couple of times back in the day, and she was a fairly terrifying prospect, I can tell you.
Almost a traumatic experience.
Well, nonetheless, she was sort of what Hawkwind were famous for, really.
Well, her and Lemmy, you know. In fact, when I saw
was
them,
Lemmy in Hawkwind?
Yes,
I don't think I realised that.
And I was roading for the Global Village Trucking Company. They were supporting Hawkwind at the Edmonton Sundance in 1973. And Silver Machine had just been a hit.
Great record.
It's a fantastic record. Yeah. And Lemmy's with them, Stacia's doing her stuff. And that's the last time I took acid for about 35 years, because I looked at this audience full of like 14-year-old kids all tripping, and I thought, I can't be part of this anymore, you know. So, like helped the AC30 into the back of the van and gave it all up for the sort of 35 years. But anyway, so this one you want to talk about. I will quote the first paragraph. This is Michael Watts interviewing Laura Nyro in 1976 for the Melody Maker, and his opening paragraph was, walking back down the icy path just before midnight, crunching frozen lumps underfoot, I felt warm with the realisation not only had she cooked steaks and played for me, but she had kissed me gently goodbye. It was not bad going for a reporter and a woman who had been a recluse for 3 years. Which is a slightly dicey start to what you think is actually a really fabulous interview.
Well, I mean, I never read this at the time, mainly being an NME reader at that point, but I think Melody Maker had a lot of incredible writers, and Michael Watts was probably one of the best. I mean, but Michael Watts goes up to Connecticut to interview Laura.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Nyro fan, and it was a sort of missing piece of the jigsaw for me, because this album Smile has just come out, and it's just a great Michael Watts piece. First off, he goes to see Sid Bernstein, the legendary Sid Bernstein, who put on, you mentioned Shea Stadium.
The Beatles, yeah.
He put on that show at Shea Stadium, and he essentially has been responsible for bringing Laura back from sort of, not the wilderness really, but it's just a lovely piece, a great album, and she says some just interesting things in it. She looks back on the era when David Geffen was managing her. Well, what I think is, I was a very, very young female. It was always a situation of young female commodity being handled by a sugar daddy. And now it's a laugh, because I would never allow that anymore. And she mentions the fact that as she's working, as she was recording Smile, her mother died at the age of 49. So her grief, it kind of inhabits this record. I think it's a pretty great record. I think all the records that Nyro made in the late 60s.
I love the one with La Belle.
La Belle, Going to Take a Miracle.
It's a great
So that had been the previous record, which was a very upbeat sort of celebration of kind of street corner doo-wop and girl groups and stuff. And are you a Nyro fan?
That's the album I know best. Yeah. But you may recall Bob Streisand, I think, had 2 hits with Laura Nyro songs.
Absolutely, she did. They're unique, those songs. To me.
They are. She's got her own melodic style and harmonic thing and everything.
I know you're something of a Joni fan.
I love
Haçienda, I think, particularly.
It is Haçienda for me, yeah.
And I think it's notable that Nyro is one of the only female singer-songwriters from the 60s that Joni will acknowledge as an equal, if not even an influence.
Will she?
Yeah,
wow.
no, she does. She pays her dues. She pays her respects to Laura. But anyway, I love that piece. It's a long kind of profile. What's next?
June '83. Richard Williams and you and myself, as it happened, all saw Curtis Mayfield.
Not together, by the way.
No, not together.
Didn't know each other then. I believe we were in the Commonwealth Institute together.
In the Commonwealth Institute, of all places to see Curtis Mayfield. You've got, I remember it vividly, as these glass cases full of shrunken heads and things like that, and there's Curtis and, Master Henry Gibson with his bongos. I just loved it, and Richard Williams loved it too, even though he thought the acoustics of the place were hopeless and so on. He says, while his young musicians obviously enjoyed themselves in dense, churning versions of 3 songs from Mayfield's score for the 1972 blaxploitation movie Superfly, and in a lengthy and deliriously rhythmatic treatment of the previous year's Move On Up, featuring enjoyable work from percussionist Henry Gibson, A relaxed reading of Give Me Your Love provided a vehicle for the leader's unique gospel-influenced style of thumb-picking lead guitar. I always like Richard Williams' writing. I think he's terrific. And I also personally like a lot of what he writes about, because we're both fairly obsessed with African-American music.
Was it Richard who got Curtis Mayfield on the Old Grey Whistle test? I think it might have been extraordinary.
He was a great presenter of that.
He never thought so.
He hated it.
He hated it.
Yeah, I was like... And of course, my generation liked him because he championed Roxy music.
Absolutely, and virtually signed them to Island.
Whereas Bob Harris thought they were cold and calculated.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
That's really probably what Richard Williams for mostly. He became a sports writer, didn't he?
Yes.
Well, among other things, he did the Guardian's chief sports writer
and
for a while.
big on Formula One, which he now despises.
Yes.
But he was a very good writer on the subject.
Yeah.
Interesting to what we were doing from earlier. Bernard Sumner from New Order being interviewed by Push about the Haçienda. This is the 10th year. This is 1992. It's the 10th anniversary celebration. And he says, it costs time as well as money. I sometimes think that if I could turn back the clock, I wouldn't do it again. And I just read the other day that apparently the Haçienda lost about £18 million over its entire life, and that was New Order's money.
Was it?
It was financed from their money.
Yeah.
I know they can be not bitter, but
a little bit
about it. Although
hardly surprising.
They did sell the building.
Well, that's true.
That was actually going to be my question, because it's now the Haçienda apartments, a new building, isn't it?
So I don't know, what that.
Well, they sold the plot of land.
I don't know anything about it. But no, it was. But I mean, it was sort of an amazing thing to do.
I went a couple of times. I was in a band in the late 80s, and our management was sort of associated with it to some extent, and I hated the acoustics of the place. Everything sounded horrible.
When we played, the acoustics were... Well, it was sort of hard.
Yeah, very hard, cavernous-sounding room.
That's right, yes.
And I think if you're going to do something like that, which is to some extent we were talking about earlier, based on things like the Paradise Garage, the idea of a sort of large club, is the one thing you do is you get it sounding right. And they really didn't. Yeah. I mean, it's very handsome, the way in which they're designed.
Beautiful, yes.
Yeah,
but Ben Kelly.
I was at the opening night for my sins.
Were you?
The very opening night when ESG played.
Oh, ESG.
We went up in
even know ESG.
It was a sort of a proverbial coach load of London journalists being bussed up there, and I don't remember much more about it. I was just staggering back into the dawn of Paddington the next morning.
Last thing I'm going to do is Simon Price. It's actually a live review of Prince Melody Maker in '95, but Chaka Khan comes on and does a couple of tunes, and he said, I've always had a secret thing about Chaka Khan. I think it's her physical abundance, like a walking harvest of the fruits of the earth. As if when she says, I'm every woman, she means it. They're all in there trying to get out.
Well, that's great. She's a cornucopia on legs.
Which I thought was a terrific bit of writing.
That's lovely.
And I mean, I love Chaka Khan too, so, and her fruits of the earth. So how about you? What have you got else?
Well, I think it's probably time to wrap up, so I'll just briefly mention a couple of pieces that really caught my eye. One, an Andy Gill interview with Steve Earle, literally 2 weeks after 9/11, where Steve Earle is talking about how the powers are immediately kicking in, and the Bush administration is taking full advantage, to sort of lock up the boundaries and everything. Yeah. And, and so he's pretty angry.
He understands precisely what's going to happen.
Exactly. There's a great piece about Marvin Gaye, Fred Della wrote for Mojo's Time Machine, about Marvin just going completely insane in London in 1981, and sort of like running around a hotel naked, completely off his mind. Do you remember this? And it was the last time he ever performed in London.
This
he was
is just
insane.
Before he goes to Ostend.
Yeah.
Do you think cocaine had anything to do with that?
I think it might have done.
That's the implication. Let's just assume that the drug that Andy Weatherall referred to earlier also crops up here.
Fred Della, by the way, just to give a different perspective to his career, used to do the crossword for Smash Hits, and he delivered it to Dr. Bits, i.e. me.
Dr. Bits!
Yeah.
I seem to remember because I got
Yeah.
very.
I always
pally
loved
with
Fred Dillon.
I remember Fred sometimes in a slightly surreptitious way, sort of saying
he was doing
goodbye to
something
his
with the
enemy.
enemy.
He'd be at the enemy, and then he'd sort of say,
Yes.
"But," and then we'd see him walking across the street.
No, he was
to your
delivering the
building.
crossword to me.
Yeah.
I would probably ask you what's going on in there then, with that bunch of losers.
The sweetest man who ever walked God's earth.
And I always like his thing. He still writes in Mojo.
Still, I mean,
Yeah.
and he's an octogenarian now.
Wow.
He's still,
He's one of
writing.
those people, again, he knows everything about the 50s.
He really does.
You needed him in your pop quiz team, didn't you?
No, you do. Someone else, by the way, like that is Seymour Stein.
Oh,
We
really?
were briefly signed to Sire. Our album Nightlife was released in America on Sire.
Yeah.
And he really is basically 1950s music publisher.
That's true.
And we
How
talk
interesting.
about all these labels and,
okay.
and songwriters and stuff. He took us out, clubbing in New York in a limo. Chris Heath was there.
Of course. Yes.
Taking notes.
Yes.
He was taking that. He was taking that.
Good for Chris.
Yeah, we need
I'd
to
like to
dig
see
that
that,
out,
man.
actually. Yes, there's various things I can't mention on a podcast, yes.
He didn't chase you round his office or anything.
No,
did he?
we-
'Cause
no.
There's always the great story. He used to chase Dee Dee Ramone around the Sire offices.
No.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, I was impressed that he signed Madonna, really.
He didn't really have to do much else, because he went way back to...
We all had the
the
compilation album.
Yeah.
Sire compilation album.
Yes.
With the Flaming Groovies on it.
Cool.
Right, yeah.
Uh,
Very lovely. We must wrap
Sorry,
up. The
yes,
very
yes, yes.
last piece, I just want to quickly refer to, is a wonderful profile of Willie Nelson's drummer, Paul English.
Oh, it's
By
fantastic.
the excellent Joe Nick Potosky. This is for the Oxford American magazine.
Yeah.
And it's a sort of hair-raising story of this guy who's been Willie's pal and kind of backup man for so many years.
Carried guns on behalf
There's a
of
famous
Willie
song,
Nelson.
Me and Paul.
Yes.
And it sort of turns out that he really is, he's like a kind of cross between Hunter S. Thompson and Jim Marshall. I mean, he's always carrying pieces, and he's always ready to go and leap into action and
So he claims
and
he's
protect
mellowed.
Willie. And
He claims he's mellowed.
No,
but-
who knew what an extraordinary character
Yeah.
he was?
I mean, you were disparaging about his drumming, but when I thought it was Albert Hall, but Martin claims that it was actually the Hammersmith Odeon. I saw Willie Nelson in the early 80s. And the way in which Willie and his guitar and Paul English's drums worked was absolutely astonishing. And the rest of the band had to follow that sort of action.
Well, and you can hear that on some records.
Yeah.
I just think he kind of deteriorated a little bit. By the time I saw him in Stockholm with Willie in about 94 or 5, he just was kind of not keeping time.
They brought
really.
a second drummer in around that time.
I mean, I don't know what that was about. But it was,
for me, it was a magical show. I wasn't expecting much. I wasn't really actually oddly terrifyingly that familiar with Willie's stuff outside of Crazy and a handful of other songs. And the sound of this gut string acoustic guitar through a kind of proper amplifier, so it's like heavy metal gut string guitar, and this drumming which just seemed to push and pull in an extraordinary
the
way.
second best version of Always on My Mind.
There you go. When we did Glastonbury last in 2010.
Don't say you brought Willie on stage.
No. we flew in from somewhere or other, and we stayed in a hotel down the road. And so for the first time ever, I went to Glastonbury the day before. Mm-hmm. And Chris and I walked into Glastonbury, walked into the main bit, and Willie Nelson was on the stage playing Always on My Mind.
Perfect.
And it was just so great.
You were always on my mind. You were always on my mind.
I've always liked those albums he did of standards.
Oh, that's
They're
fantastic.
amazing.
Stardust is
Stardust,
such a
there
great
you go.
record. You know,
Really amazing, yeah.
And you know, when I saw him, it suddenly occurred to me that he's presented as a country artist, but he's actually got more to do with Bixby Beck and as a wide
does.
Carmichael.
Carmichael.
Absolutely.
You know, that's the tradition he's really out
It
of.
is.
And his guitar playing, as you've often pointed out, is very, very sort of jazz.
Yeah, it's sort of somewhere between jazz and Mexican music. You know,
Django Reinhardt, I know he's very influenced by Django.
and as a singer, he's got this extraordinary way his phrasings can be so far behind the beat, it's just not true. I think he's just marvellous, and he's had an extraordinary long career, you know, and
almost as long as the Pet Shop Boys.
And
Even longer, maybe.
I know,
and he stopped writing songs, which I think is a great shame. But he stopped writing songs, I think, when he felt he just ran out of songs to write. And I think that some songwriters, you only have a finite number of songs in you. You know, you clearly buck that trend. But I mean, I remember feeling I'd run out of songs after 1.5 albums.
Also,
you know.
Neil probably doesn't smoke quite as much weed as Willie.
No.
If any.
I've never
If
been
any.
a weed smoker.
He hasn't
It always made me
sparked
feel
up and-
sick. Unfortunately, it always made me feel sick.
Yeah.
But that feels like a kind of suitable.
We're going to go out. We're going to go out with the last clip, which is where you discuss how a certain football chant was created from one of your songs.
And we've all sung along.
Those
of us who go to football matches have all sung along.
It's been a huge pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
for
I've
coming.
enjoyed it too. Thank you
We
very
hope so.
And you know, I read the site. I have various articles on it.
You certainly do.
Which I always
felt I'd written more articles than that, but I don't.
You have, and there will be more.
Yeah.
They do
Yeah.
get sort of drip fed in, but there are more, and there are more coming. So subscribe to Rock's Back Pages for more Neil Tennant. But thank you, Neil, so much for coming.
Yeah.
It's been such a joy. And we will be back next week without a guest. We do have some great guests coming up in the near future. Paul Gambaccini's coming in. Lorraine
great
Alderman.
Gambo.
Yeah.
Love Gambo.
Gambo. Yeah. So join us next week. Neil, good luck with Hotspot.
Thank you.
With the Chris Heath reissues.
Yes.
Send him our regards.
Our film is coming out again. And reissued by the BFI, bizarrely.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
And enjoy the tour.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So it's May the 1st in Berlin.
I'm going to try and snaffle some tickets.
I'm
My
sure
eldest
Murray
son
can sort
has
you out.
asked if we could. Can you get us into the O2? Because he lives very near the O2.
I'm sure we can.
I think it's late May, isn't it? So I
It's
shall
the
be
end of May, I believe.
twisting Murray's arm.
Oh, great.
Great. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. It was a pleasure.
Lovely.
Really enjoyed it.
Bye.
Bye.
It started in northern Italy, I believe. I mean, I'm not a football fan. Chris is actually a big football fan. He supports Arsenal. It started in northern Italy and spread into Germany. That's when we were first told about it. Though I didn't quite believe it, really. I didn't realise how big it was, anyway. And then it spread into France. And then Paris Saint-Germain, the French Paris football team, played Arsenal in part of the European Cup or something. And they were singing some chants to the tune of Go West. Arsenal started singing 1-0 to the Arsenal, 1-0 to the Arsenal, 1-0. And now it's become a, you know, they sing your shit and you know you are. Do you live in
I live here, but I watch the football.
Okay,
Settle
and Chris occasionally phones me up and says turn on the sports channel because they're all singing Go West. And Chris said one of his greatest moments of his life was when Arsenal won the European Cup and they were all singing 2-0 to the Arsenal. And he said it was just, and playing our record and singing along with it. He said it was really, really good.
You can die a happy man.
That was Neil Tennant in conversation with Steven Daly in 1996, concluding this week's Rock's Back Pages podcast. Many thanks to special guest Neil Tennant. Details about the Pet Shop Boys' new album Hotspot and upcoming tour are available via petshopboys.co.uk. The new editions of Chris Heath's Pet Shop Boys books are published by Heinemann. The hosts were Bonnie Hoskins and Mark Pringle, and the producer was Jasper Murison Bowie. The Rock's Back Pages podcast is part of the Pantheon Podcast Network. You can find thousands of articles, as well as hundreds of full-length audio interviews at rocksbackpages.com.
So that really was terrific,
That was
honestly.
great,
That was
thank you.
hugely
We
enjoyable.
knew you'd be great, but you were stellar. You do give great quote. There were a couple that I was just like, even if he'd just come in and just said that and then gone, it would have been worth it.